update the debt schedule, the values will automatically update properly up above. So for year one, revolver equals I-125. For our term loan, it should be equals I-132. Now for our senior bonds, remember in the old model we didn't have any senior bonds. We had a revolver, we had a term loan, we had an unsecured piece. We didn't have senior bonds, so we don't have a place in our debt schedule to amortize or calculate interest on the senior bonds. What we need to do here is I need to leave a placeholder. Okay, I need to leave a reminder for myself that when I make room for the senior bonds in the debt schedule, when I complete the analysis of the senior bonds in the debt schedule, then I'll have something to link to. But right now I have nothing to link to. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to color this cell yellow. And all I did was go to the paint can, colored it yellow. You color it blue, black, green, whatever. Just make it stand out for yourself so that when you're reviewing your model later, you know, hey, I'm still not done. I need to update this. All right. Normally, I don't like to leave placeholders, but sometimes I just have to. Like I said, I don't have anything to link to just yet. So create whatever placeholder you need. I highlighted it as yellow. And then for the unsecured debt, we can link down to cell I-139, the ending balance on our unsecured debt, just as we did with the revolver and the term loan. And once we have those cells all updated, we can fill those to the right. F9 to recalc. And again, the values that you see in these cells right now are not going to be correct, but the links are correct. And that's the important thing. In the real world, I probably would create a whole new debt schedule for each of those 4 new pieces of debt. But it's pretty time consuming, it's pretty tedious. We really don't have time to do that here, so that's why we're using the existing area that we blocked off down below. Our other liabilities, we don't need to make a change to that. That's just referring back to our assumptions tab, and again, we're not changing any of the assumptions on the operating assumptions. Okay, but I do need to make 2 more changes in my model. My last 2 line items, my shareholders' equity, retained earnings, and common stock. If we open up the formula for retained earnings, we can see quite obviously why we need to change that. It's keying off of the old historical balance sheet figure. And again, when we bought the company, all those old retained earnings got wiped away. We bought out all the equity, those got wiped away. We started out anew. What we need to do is change that reference to G82 to H82. We need retained earnings to basically reset, key off of what was listed in the pro forma balance sheet, that deficit retained earnings of $6 million. All right, so if you update that in year 1, hit F9 to recalc, all of the other subsequent years will automatically update. You just need to make that change in year 1. And then for our common stock, if we look at this formula, it's referring back to the assumptions tab. We can update this in one of 2 ways. We can go back to the assumptions tab and change our common stock assumption to equal the equity that we're putting in the deal, or we can just set year 1 equal to the pro forma balance sheet amount and fill that to the right. And I think that's what I'm going to do. It's just a little easier. All right, so again, in year 1, set common stock equal to cell H83, and then fill that across to the right. Basically what we're saying is that common stock is going to remain unchanged. We don't anticipate any owner withdrawals. We don't anticipate any additional equity infusions during our holding period. Common stock will stay level. Does that make sense? And again, make sure you hit F9 to recalc. We're in manual mode. Otherwise, your numbers will not match mine. And at this point, not surprisingly, our balance sheet is way off. Okay, you should see very large numbers in your check line. In this case, large negative numbers, and that's okay. And again, we're not finished with our model, so I wouldn't expect the balance sheet to balance just yet. It's probably a good time to save. Just a quick Control S. Save our work. Now we'll move on to the cash flow statement. Okay, so if we look at the cash flow, first line item, net income, just keying off of our income statement above, we don't need to make any changes to this. All right, net income will change based on updating the interest expense and having that flow through the income statement, but we don't need to make any changes here. Depreciation and amortization, also no change. We made our change to amortization above. We can see that that's getting picked up down below in that this includes both I-16 depreciation and I-17 amortization. But I do want to insert a row right below that. So if you go to line 93, use our Alt-IR to insert a row. What I want to do is insert a line item for PIK interest. Remember, one piece of our debt, that mezzanine piece, our interest is going to get paid in kind. It's not getting paid in cash. You can think of that as almost like a depreciation or an amortization figure. It's an expense that runs through the income statement, but it's a non-cash expense. And as we know from accounting rules, we need to add back non-cash items in our cash flow. So once we calculate our PIK interest later today in our debt schedule, we're going to want that to be added back here. Okay, so we've made room for that. I also, because at this point we don't have anything to link to, I'm going to leave another placeholder. Just a reminder, visual cue telling me that once I get my debt schedule done, I still need to come back and establish that link. Does everyone understand why we're doing that for PIK interest? Okay. Well, let's look at our working capital items now. And if we look at the very first working capital item, accounts receivable, if we hit F2 to look at that formula, we see that indeed this is still queuing off of our historical balance sheet. We see a reference to column G. Remember what I said earlier, anytime we see a reference to our historical balance sheet or column G, we need to change that to H. And there's two ways I could do that. Number one, I could go through and each line item I could change to H, do that one by one. What I'm going to show you how to do, though, is to do this real quickly using a find and replace within Excel. All right, so the first thing I want you to do, select all of these working capital items in year one only. Again, to select multiple cells, hold down Shift, use your down arrow key. Select that range. Then what I want you to do is hold down Control and hit H. Control H is a shortcut for find and replace. And I believe it also works in, I believe that shortcut will also work in Word, PowerPoint, etc. So kind of a nice shortcut to use. You should get a pop-up box like the one I've got here saying in line 1, find what, and then in line 2, replace with whatever we specify. And in that find what line, I want to type G, replace with, I want to type H. Make sure, this is really important, make sure you've only selected that range of cells that we mentioned a moment ago. Okay? If you do a global find and replace, every G in your model is going to be changed to an H. Anytime it happens in the text or in the cell references, so be very careful. Make sure you've selected only that range. Find G, replace with H. Then you can tab over until replace all is highlighted, hit enter. You'll get a pop-up here saying Excel has completed its search and made 7 replacements. Which makes sense, we selected 7 cells, each had 1 G, so it got replaced. And now if we look at any of those cells in year 1, you'll see that we've got no references left to column G. All right, just kind of a quick and easy way to do a find and replace. And we only need to do that in year 1. All right, all of the other years are already correct. The reason it's just in year 1 is we inserted a column for the pro forma balance sheet between column G and column I, and that's why. All right, so that gets us through our cash from operations. Cash from investing section, we actually don't need to make any changes. Again, all of our operating assumptions stay the same. If we did want to make changes, we'd make them on the Assumptions tab, not here. And then lastly, our cash flow from financing section. If we look at that change in revolver formula, first of all, there are two problems here, actually. Right. Number one, when you hit F2, you'll see that that formula includes a G. So there's some reference to the historical balance sheet, so we know that's wrong. But secondly, if we look at the row number, row 68, if we scroll up, row 68 is our old revolver. Remember, that old revolver goes away, it gets paid off. So what I want to do, rather than editing that formula, I'm just going to overwrite it. And what I want that formula to say is equals, what is that, I-120, or I-73, examining changes in the new debt, not the old debt. And I want to be keying off our pro forma balance sheet, not the historical one. All right, so for that change in revolver, let's just overwrite that formula. Type in equals I-73 minus H-73. So that formula should be equals I-73 minus H-73. What I want to do is I want to fill that across to the right, because that's going to apply in every year. All right, so fill that to the right, and then I want to fill it down one, and only one, because up in the balance sheet, the term loan is right below the revolver, so we can fill that down one and get that proper formula. Before we copy that to the unsecured debt line, we've actually got to insert a line for the change in senior bonds. So just fill that across to the right and then fill it down just one row to the term loan and hit F9 to recalc, and you should have numbers like what I've got here. All right, let's move on. As I mentioned a second ago, we do not, as of this moment, we don't have a space in our financing section for the change in the senior bonds, so we need to insert a row. So if you highlight any cell on row 112, that change in unsecured debt line, we'll hit Alt-IR, and I want to type in change in senior bonds. And then what we can do is we can actually take the formulas in the row for the change in the term loan. If you select all 5 of these cells, basically the range from, I guess, what is it, I-111 to M-111, Control-C to copy. And then if you select as your destination range both the change in senior bonds and the change in unsecured debt, we'll use an Alt-ESF, paste special formulas, because we want to preserve that underline in the change in unsecured debt line. So Alt-ESF is in Frank to paste, F9 to recalc, and your numbers should update and they should look like what we have here. Again, all I did was copy the change in term loan formula, used the paste special formulas to paste it in the change in senior bonds and change in unsecured debt lines. Okay, well that's really all we need to make as far as changes go in the cash flow statement. Our total cash flow line is just going to be changing cash from operations, cash from investing, cash from financing. We've already updated those. Okay, but we do need to update our beginning cash position. If we look at that cell reference, it's referring to cell G120. All right, we know now anything in G is the historical balance sheet. We need to change that to be linking to the pro forma balance sheet. So now I could do this one of two ways. I could just change this G to an H, and it would be referring to this cell here. But this cell is blacked out. Right? I know it's blank. There's no number in there, but if for some reason a number gets mistakenly entered in there, this is blacked out, we'd never see it. So what I'd rather do in this year one, just to be safe, is say equals, and then scroll up to my pro forma balance sheet and link to cell H47. It's just safer that way in year one. Hit enter. And then years 2, 3, 4, and 5 we can leave alone. They're referring to the prior year's ending cash right there in row 120, which is fine there because we can see it. My only concern here was this is blacked out and I don't really know what's going on in that cell unless I put my cursor there and highlight it. All right, everybody have that? And now our cash flow is done. Again, the numbers will continue to update, but all the links and the formulas in there are correct. But I do need to make a change in my cash flow before revolver line item. Right, anybody tell me why? It's kind of a review what this represents, but can anybody tell me why I need to make a change in this cell? No, because for our debt, changes in debt, we're referring to it right here. And we've already changed, so we're referring to the new debt and the old. We've already done that. But what does this cash flow before revolver cell, what is it missing right now? Change in senior bonds. If we F2 on that, open up that cell formula, we see that we've got our change in our term loan and change in unsecured debt. It's not referring to the change in senior bonds because they weren't there before. And so what I want to do is hit F2 on this cell just like I did, and then at the end of that cell type plus I-112. And you should see that change in senior bond cell get highlighted. Remember, this cell, this change in cash before revolver, needs to measure all of our changes in our cash flow before we look to the revolver. That also needs to include the senior bonds. So we'll change that in year one, and then we need to fill that across to the right because all 5 years did not include that reference. Probably a good time to save as well. So just Control S real quick. And then we'll start working on our debt schedule. Okay, well, let's keep moving on. Let's start on our debt schedule. Let's work on a revolver. And the first thing we need to change is that first cell, beginning revolver balance. If we look at it, okay, obviously it's referring to the old balance sheet, so that's wrong. It's also referring to the wrong row number. Let's just overwrite this cell. I want to say equals. Beginning revolver balance is the same thing as saying last year's ending balance, last period's ending balance. So I want to link to my ending balance on my pro forma debts or pro forma balance sheet, which is cell H73. Just for year one. Okay, year 2, 3, 4, and 5, those are each referring to the prior year's ending balance right there in the debt schedule, so we're okay there. Just change year one to refer to the pro forma balance sheet, cell H73. And hit F9 to recalc, otherwise your numbers won't match mine. Okay, our pay down drawdown line, no change here. We've got our minus min formula. Nothing's going to change with respect to that. Right, that's automatically figuring out what we can pay down or what we need to draw down or borrow. Our ending balance is correct. It's just the sum of our beginning balance and any pay downs or drawdowns. But as you recall, our interest rates have now changed. Remember last time when we first did this model, we had our interest rates. They floated off of LIBOR. Now the interest rates have changed. Our revolver interest rate, as we specified on our source and use tab, is now 7%, and it's a fixed interest rate. So what I want to do here is link back to my source and use tab. I want to link to that 7% and lock on that, and then I'll copy that across.